Um, so I wanted to just clarify before we sort of get too much into like how you write a great blog, to talk about, well, what is a blog? Because blogging had a real starting point, and then we sort of moved into lots of other different platforms, and it's changed a lot in the last 5 years. I think one of the important things to remember is that when we talk about blogging as academics, we often mean writing for a non-academic audience. So writing outside of the peer-reviewed journals for a much broader readership. And that's a really important distinction to make because your journal article is a very specific disciplinary conversation. We're talking about more of a public conversation. So I kind of try to split up what I think is three kinds of writing that we see academics do nowadays. The first being personal blogs. So many of you will be familiar with Substack, which is where a lot of people started building their own blogs, building their identity. LinkedIn has articles which are longer than a LinkedIn post, so you get more space to write. And then we have Medium and Substack, which are existing platforms. Substack is a new one. You may not have heard of it, but we are seeing increasing numbers of researchers, Naomi Hussein, for example, and institutes such as King's College London moving over to the Substack platform. And what all of these platforms have in common is you control them. If you can have a really personal voice, you can have the say on what you want to write and how often you want to write. The downside of these is you have to build the audience and you have to work really hard. Even on Substack and Medium, there are a few sort of things to think about how you would build an audience. It isn't just automatic that you're using these existing platforms. In contrast, if you look at some of the other platforms that people might have written for, you have things like The Conversation, Guardian Development Blogs in the UK, Monga Bay, which is a real environmental focus. And then you have your specialist development blogs, Global Dev, EADI, who we have here today, and Global South Studies, who I understand are in the audience here today as well. And with those sorts of blogs or news sites, there's a bit of a difference in that they have very specific editorial policies. They'll have a certain requirement around the tone, the sources, and how they want to be listed. One of the benefits of those is that they have audiences that already exist. They'll have a clear idea of who their audience is and what will work for that audience and what won't. So I think one of the key things, if you're thinking about blogging, and in the sort of, I don't know, 10 or so years that I've been working particularly with researchers on comms, there's been all this different demand, like, oh, you should get on social media, you should be on Twitter, you should be into your alt metrics, then you should be off Twitter, you should go onto Mastodon, now you should be blogging, now you should be on Substack. There's a lot of change and demand, and you guys are busy enough as it is. So I think it's about knowing why. Why are you blogging? And this will be really helpful because it will help you identify which places you want to write, where you want to blog, where you want to be published, and also to know if it was successful as well. So I do think there's a lot of good reasons to blog. I think it's a great way of getting your research out there, getting more visibility for your topic, for your country. You could certainly reach some stakeholders who could be interested in your research that you definitely won't access through a journal article, and certainly not if it's behind a paywall. And you can just get a lot of feedback for early ideas. If you're blogging about a thought piece, you build these collaborations, get a bit of a public voice and a bit of profile. And I think if you're researching a particular country and you're from that country, it's a really good opportunity to make those issues known. So a couple of weeks ago, I was speaking to a scientist and a writer from Indonesia. So she does what's called science comms, which is another form of more public facing writing. And her reason for doing it was, Indonesia is one of the most populous countries in the world, but it doesn't get into the Indonesian press into the global press very often. So her writing was to change that, but also she wanted to engage with stakeholders that were quite senior in Indonesia. And actually, if she was right, like trying to get that cut through in Indonesia was quite challenging for her. So writing in English on global platforms enabled her to get that kind of cut through. So as you can see, there's actually a real gravitas towards blogging and why you could blog. It's not any less serious than academic writing. It's just a form, a different form of communication. So I know that this is such an important point that I saw Christiane's going to make it as well, but knowing your audience is really important. And what I would say on this is the public is not like a defined enough audience. I think it really helps to have a good idea of who that is, not just the public. What country are they in? How much do they know? And that helps you decide where you want to write and who you're writing for. And on my slide at the bottom, you can see this little stamp that says example. And I think if you haven't been sent these already, then Sheila's going to send them out. But all the examples are to blogs that I think you can have a look at and see these different things come to life. So in this specific blog written by Bert, who's a researcher. He has such a clear sense. He is writing for a Tanzanian audience. He knows that they know a certain something about politics. He even knows what side of the political coin they are on. And that allows him to write with a really clear voice and really sense, a real strong sense of what he's writing about and what he wants them to feel. So I think that's really important. One audience per post and, one key message for that audience. I also tried to think about what are some of the biggest differences between the academic writing that you do and the blog writing that you do. And the audience is quite key to that because for blogging, the audience is very reader-led. And because of that, you want your main point to come up first. You want to write it in active voice. You want to use less jargon. Any caveats you have to make, they're going to come later. You will keep your sentences kind of short. You don't want to interrupt your writing with references, and you might have some hyperlinks in there. And it's okay to have a more clear voice. So in the example that I've linked to for you to look at later, you can see the research from an irrigation project, again in Tanzania. They have their policy briefs and all their other kind of academic publications. And then you can see how they moved that to the conversation, which is a platform for academics to write about current affairs and about research findings, and how they really wrote their research findings as more of a news story in a very different tone. So I often get asked, well, what are the elements of a blog? And there isn't really a strict formula as such. Blogs can be quite different, and I'm sure maybe Christiane has something to say on this too. If her Yardi blogs, they have like a structure that they like. Um, it's okay to have some of the elements that you might have in your journal article, but it's not a simplified version of just your journal article. It can be a little bit more sophisticated than that. And there are lots of different ways that you can use like a story of somebody that brings the situation to life or a call to action. You can have reflection in it as well, which you wouldn't normally see maybe in an academic paper. The example that you can link to after this is from one of the attendees of a workshop on equality, diversity, and inclusion in development studies. And I understand that some of the participants are going away to write an academic paper later. And I think that's really interesting that blogs can be that first place where you write your reflections and they may help feed into a paper later. So I tried to think of one formula, and I guess the most common formula that certainly I train when I'm writing with people is this storytelling formula. So, what is the problem? What happened? Why does it matter? Why now? You might want to think about what are you doing about it? So this could be your research, and how is it going to make a difference? And it's a tried and tested formula because as humans, this is kind of how we are used to understanding things, the problem, why it matters, how we're going to fix it, how will that make a difference. And it's just something that you can play with. It's not the only formula, but it is one. You will find this formula played out quite often in the conversation. And so I've linked to an example there. So I think it's a really interesting example because they spent quite a lot of time in that blog talking about what happened. And their research is around tax. Tax is like a little bit dull. So I think it's really good that they spent so much time talking about the problem to really get people to buy in to their research findings. And then I just have a couple of tips on how to improve your writing. For me, I think the biggest one I can give people is speak it out loud. I always practice like I'm talking to my mom, and if my mom can understand, you can like ring up your friend, talk to a friend, see if they understand. If you're super shy and you're not ready to do that, I would use your phone, hit record, and say what you want to say, and then force yourself to listen back. You'll be like cringing, but listen back to it and look at what different words you use because I think they're really interesting. The words we say writing are the same we say we're talking. And then listen to when you kind of trip over yourself and you don't know how to say something. That's where you need to do more work. Just a couple of other things to think about is just think that, especially nowadays, people are so busy, like attention spans are so limited. You see so many news articles say this is a 3 minute read. And I'm like, wow, when did we get so busy that 3 minutes needs to be, sold into us? So because of that, you need to do what's called bluff, put the bottom line up front that stands for. And that just really means get to the heart of the story or the point right at the beginning. Um, that's quite different. That's normally your conclusion in your article. I would also be prepared to cut words. And my top tip for doing this, because I do a lot of creative nonfiction outside of work, is do version control. Like have a document, and if you love it, but it's long or it's telling too many stories, do a save as because you will feel much better about cutting the words you have spent so long on crafting if you know they're still there and you haven't erased them forever. So a couple of other ideas that you can use there. Using subheadings has become more and more common as our attention spans get shorter. And for goodness sake, avoid the jargon. There's so much jargon we use in our sector. So I'm going to leave you with some ideas to get started. Don't overthink it. Pick a topic you really want to write about and then start reading blogs that already exist. Who is writing about this topic or what is the platform you want to write for? And then practice writing, get some feedback. And I guess the only other thing I would say is if your absolute dream is to be, I don't know, on The Conversation or Manga Bay or somewhere that's quite competitive, maybe don't go there straight away until you're 100% like, well, fairly confident of your writing. Maybe start with some friendly faces. You have made some contacts in this session. Maybe talk to myself or Christiane or other editors about getting some feedback on your writing before you go and hit like the big time with those blogs that pull in hundreds of thousands of readers. So when you get sent this, there is a load of resources, and I'd like to say big thanks to Global South Studies, who have a video, they have slides, they have a takeaway blog on the blog, and they've also got a list of blogs. The Conversation has absolute tons of practical guides as well. Rising Scholars also do a course. And then I've highlighted there at the end IARI and their blog. And DSA, we don't have as many blogs, but we would love to have you. So if you find that your blog doesn't have a home, we're particularly open to places where, we don't fit, other blogs don't fit in with the themes. So that is my whistle stop tips. I'm going to end there, Sheila, and you can tell me if there's anything else you want to know at this point.
Okay, thank you so much, Rowena. Somebody who's not done any blogging. Okay, I've done just one, but not to that extent. But I think I've really gotten quite some helpful tips, and I hope the rest of you as well in terms of how to get started. And perhaps you have any questions for Rowena, I would encourage you to put it in the chat. And as they do that, I'm going just to ask a question, Rowena. You mentioned a few blog sites on the last slide, and how I think one of the questions that many people could have is where do you know which platform to use at when you're getting started? Which platform do you begin with? So maybe some tips on that that you're
Mhm.
happy to share.
Sure. I think it goes back to knowing why you're blogging. Don't just pick, like if everybody, like there was a time when everyone wanted to write for the conversation. Or don't just pick that because that's the one everyone's talking about. Pick the home for your research. So if you know you want to write about farmers in Tanzania or politics and plastic bags in Rwanda or Palestine, for example, go looking for where that community is now, and have a look at what they're writing. Are they saying the kind of things that you like? Do you think there's a natural home for your blog there? That would be my tip.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for that, Rowena. And thank you too for offering to support bloggers or people who are just getting started in terms of getting that feedback. Apart from reaching out to individuals who can support like yourself, do you know of any platforms or communities where early career researchers or anyone just looking to get started can find people to give support? Maybe if you're aware of such platforms.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, it's a good question. I mean, there is kind of support in different places. So I know that Jenny's been writing. Jenny's been organizing these writing sessions, for example, which is a good
Mhm.
place to get the discipline of writing. But there might even be an opportunity, I don't know, to get feedback or ask if somebody offline, separate to that meeting can give some feedback. Rising scholars, as I mentioned, they do their course, so there may be an opportunity to get feedback there as well. Um, I think there's potential. We have a LinkedIn ECR group, so you could post in there and say, look, I'm writing this really specific blog about this topic, and I would love to run it by someone, see if you get any response. I'm going to address the elephant in the room, AI. Okay, so if you give it a brief and you say, I'm writing this for the conversation or for the Guardian or whatever, and here is my blog, what do you think? I think you can get feedback from AI. It could be very useful, but you need to write a brief very well. It needs to know who you're writing for. It needs to know why you're writing. And what do you mean by what kind of feedback? Like, are you looking for feedback on the structure? Are you looking for feedback on the English and the grammar? Or is it because you want it to suddenly reinterpret your research findings and come up with, something else? Because if you don't tell it, it will just give you all this other feedback, which I think can overwhelm you. I would say one thing I just do not do, don't get it to rewrite your blog for you because as a communications person, the rhythm and the style of both Gemini and Chat GPT is so formulaic that I can spot it a mile off. Um, Everything you write will be quiet. It will be short. There will be short sentences. Not like this, but like that. It's really formulaic. So please don't be tempted. Use it as a sparring partner. How can I make this sentence better? Do you think this is clear if I was speaking to people who don't know what degrowth is? That's okay, but don't get it to review. And even if you sometimes say just check the punctuation, the version it'll give you, they will slip things in. So this is all tried and tested experience. I hope that helps.
Well, thank you so much for the feedback. I'm checking the chat and can't see any questions at the moment. So feel free if you have any questions to just pop it in the chat. I'll have one more question for you, Rowena, because we still have 2 minutes left on your time, and that would be there's the format of writing a blog. You talked about the storytelling approach, and that seems to really draw people in because I mean we love stories. But are there many or are there other approaches apart from storytelling that people could use to write blogs, for example?
Yeah, I think in defense of storytelling, you've kind of got two narrative styles. You've got, let me tell you about this person who lives in a drought affected area, blah, blah, blah. But then you've also got what is the problem? Why does it matter? So, if you don't feel comfortable with the individual storytelling, you still have the structure of storytelling. And I would encourage people to look at the conversation because there's a lot of storytelling in there that doesn't always feel like it's
Mhm.
stories. Um, we went through a big phase where everything was very clickbaity. So listicles, 5 things you should know about. eh, you could try it. If you're really struggling, try it and see.
Mhm.
I think the other thing is a question. So I looked at some headlines today, and you have questions like, what is strategic autonomy and why is everyone talking about it? Um, so if there are concepts you need to unpack, um, what, how have the aid cuts impacted Ebola response, for example, these sorts of things? Think of a question and then think about how you would answer it around that. And I think that's a very common one. And you see that again a lot in the conversation, but they do sometimes follow it up with narrative. They sometimes follow it up with headings. But I think those are good structures you can play with.
Well, thank you so much, Rowena, for that. And also the links, sharing, the tips. You can find more information in the conversation, or, some of these blogs actually give you those tips. And so you can be able to really see and find your way, which one works best for you. And all of these resources we'll be able to share with you even after this session. So thank you so much for that. I haven't seen any questions, but I believe as we continue. Oh, are there questions? Yeah, I haven't seen yet. I don't know. Let me just check. No, I haven't seen any questions yet. But in case you have any, or something comes in your mind as we continue with the session, please feel free to pop it in the chat. We'll have another final round of Q&A, so you'll be able to ask Rowena these questions once again. Thank you so much, Rena, for that. And now we would like to welcome our second speaker, Christiane Kleeman, who I already introduced. But for those who probably joined a bit later, she is a journalist who she's worked for many years as on communications, on climate change and degrowth. She works for ERD, and she has been there since 2018, and she handles everything communications for ERD. So maybe at this point, I would welcome her to tell us more what is ERD, and how can we participate or know more. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. I'm actually the counterpart of Rowena. I'm also part-time. So the DSA is a British association, and we are DSA's counterpart on a European level. So we are the European Association of Development Research and Training Institutes, with more than 100 institutional members and several individual members, also early career researchers. And as we are talking on blogging today, our blog is something, the EADI blog, Debating Development Research, as the title says, is a blog dedicated to the development research, development studies community. So shall I try to share my screen, or will
yes,
you?
I will. Yeah.
Sorry?
I will share it for you. Just a moment.
You share it for me. Okay, great.
Yeah.
So let's wait for the first slide to pop up.
Okay.
Otherwise, I can try to do so as well.
Just a moment. I don't know.
Yeah, something is coming up. I'm not seeing it yet, but it
Can you
looks
see
good.
my presentation?
No, I'm seeing your face. Shall I try to share, or?
Okay. Yeah, I think there's
I'm now seeing your face again instead of a screen. And I can try it as well if that works better.
Okay.
Shall I try?
Yeah, please do.
Select window. Do you see my select?
Okay.
Select. Let me just house. I'm not finding because, oh gosh, I'm in the app. Just a moment. No, I'm just not finding it. Oh, here maybe? No, that's a program. No, sorry.
Yeah.
I have it in my screen.
and open the presentation in that window.
Maybe this? No. I'm sorry, I'm unable to find my slides on my screen because somehow it's the browser.
This is the PowerPoint.
Just a moment, this is it.
It's not the PowerPoint, it's PDF.
It's PDF.
Okay.
So
Open it in another window.
I'm so sorry for these technical glitches.
I think I have Christian's slides if you want me to try and share.
That would be great, Rowena, because with me it's in the browser and for some reason I cannot share it.
Here. And this is the Zoom. Yeah.
Share.
Yeah.
Oh yes, that's the first slide. Thank you very much. It's just our logo and our title, so please go ahead.
Yeah.
The next one. Yes, that's our blog. The next one, it's just the link to our blog. So yes, one further.
Okay.
Next one. Yeah, this is our blog. So next one. Yes, I mean, as Rowena already said, so it's very important who's your audience. So whether it's the general public or a certain group of people or people related to a specific topic, because that determines also to which extent you have to explain general stuff. So the more specialized an audience is, the more you can also, depend on them knowing basic things about your topic. And it's, of course, always good to know before you start writing what are your most important messages. Next slide, please. Yes, so the question is, what is an academic blog post? And I've found this definition. An academic blog article is a short piece of writing bearing informed insight or opinion linked to academic research directly or indirectly. Next one. Yes, and now we are again what Rowena also explained a little bit about. So what is the difference between academic writing and a good blog post? So for our blog, and I think that goes for every blog, it's important to have a really catchy title. It can also be provocative so that really people's eyes land on it. Of course, the text itself also needs to be snappy and clear, and also bring up arguments that capture people. And of course, you need insights, research-based insights, but don't give too many. Give just a few which are the most eye-catching and the most important to the message that you want to bring across. And of course, a smashing conclusion is always good to make the reader also maybe rethink their opinions that they had before reading the article. Next one, please. Yes, from my experience in running a blog, I've put together some do's and don'ts. So sometimes I receive drafts which are great, where I don't need to edit except for very small things. And there are ones which are a little bit of a mess, where I have to rewrite the whole thing. So it's always good if people are aware of those do's and don'ts. For do's, of course, which is very important if you're writing on something which is quite specific, maybe to a specific topic in a specific country, that you link your topic to a wider societal problem. Or even if there's something in the news something which is just under discussion, how your topic relates to it. I mean, if it relates. And of course, it's important to write accessibly and clear and to the point, to use informal language, journalistic language, to use colorful and rich language with examples. And for our blog, which also runs with images, of course, not all blogs run with images, but we need a meaningful teaser image, which is always a bit challenging when we have those development topics, which are like, especially those theoretical ones. It's difficult to find a good image, but it's worth taking the time to look for one. And Rowena already said we have like paragraph headings because people read on screen, and if you have a running text, your eye gets lost a little bit, so it can dwell on these paragraph headings. Yes, of course, it's good to discuss the topic from various sides and also suggest solutions. And what I also get very often is that people send me blog posts with footnotes. Please don't, because it stops people from reading and it looks too academic. And we only publish blogs with hyperlinks directly in the text, no brackets and nothing of this. Next slide, please. Of course, I mean, the opposite of what I just said are the don'ts. What I also observe quite a lot is that people send a lengthy introduction, and mostly that introduction everybody knows, even the general public. So I would not go with a lengthy introduction. There are some blogs which have a little summarizing blurb in the beginning. Our blog doesn't. I mean, there are pros and cons towards that, but we don't have it. Of course, don't use academic jargon and acronyms. And if you use an acronym, of course, introduce it. Please don't go too much into detail or build long sentences. Yeah, and we already had footnotes and references, so please don't insert those. And please don't use many brackets or insertions. Next slide, please. Yes. So what are the strengths and weaknesses of blogs? So the strengths are they are very good to make your topic known to a specific audience. For example, our blog is for the development studies community in general. And that is such a broad thing that there are loads of topics in there which are important to the community, but which the majority of the community isn't aware of. And it's very interesting to read on topics that you haven't read about before. And that makes your perspective, that widens your perspective. And of course, it's a very good means to connect research with activism. So blog posts are very good if you want to move people around a topic. So they won't read a journal article, but they will read a blog, and then those blogs can also be used by activists or by NGOs to raise awareness or to even mobilize for action or so. And it's also a good exercise to distill the essence and relevance of your research, because sometimes you get just lost in detail. And if you step back and say, okay, what do I want to say with that research? What are my main messages? So it is a good tool to structure your thinking about your research. But of course, blogs never reach the wider general public, mostly. I mean, apart from the very, very, very famous ones. So next slide, please. So now we go into our blog, the EADI blog, which, I mean, as its title also says, is Debating Development Research. It has been set up for the broader development studies community and everybody interested in development issues. So also there are also a few policymakers who read it, so everybody interested in development. And it also has articles which are like on that meta level, which are highlighting discussions about the discipline and discussed within the discipline. So what is this and that in development studies, and why is this a problem? Why is this being criticized? This is also quite interesting to read if you don't want to dig into that very academically. It's of course a platform for discussion. And as I already said before, it's an opportunity to showcase a certain topic or piece of research to the community. And the blog itself has published over 270 posts since October 2018 when we set it up. And thanks to God, I mean, the readership is constantly growing. Next slide, please. So in our experience, what runs better, I've put together a few examples here, is everything that has catchy titles and images and which highlights critical discussions within the discipline and posts critical of capitalism and voicing decolonial critique. So that's our experience, what runs best. For our community, of course, that might be totally different in other communities. Next slide. Yes, so we have, but what's also a good idea is having blog series on certain topics or events. So we have set up series about every ARD conference. So every 3 years we have a big general conference at one of our member institutes. The next one is in Antwerp, end of June coming up. And so we have blog posts on research presented at these conferences. We had quite a big project, Share Your Decolonizing Story, where we had different blog posts also on people and their experience with their attempts to decolonize an aspect or development studies. We had a series on Trump and development. We had a European development policy outlook, something on indebting the green transition. And we had a volume out called Building Development Studies for the New Millennium. And because that was unfortunately our last non-open access book, I think, we had a blog series around it to give people the opportunity to read stuff from that book without a paywall. And next slide, please. And our experience with posting frequency is, we have usually 3 to 8 posts per month. We try to publish 1 post per week, roughly. People can just subscribe to our blog, but of course we also disseminate it via our newsletter and on our social media channels. But we've also made the experience, if we post too frequently, the individual posts don't get as much attention as they would get otherwise. So I would not, for running a blog, I would not post more than 2 posts a month. So do I still have one? Yeah, exactly. I have another slide yet. This is if people are interested in writing for our blog, they can mail directly to me, but my mail address is also on the blog. Yeah, you can mail me and propose a topic. If we say, okay, that's great, I'd love to publish that. We normally have, our posts are between 6,000 and 8,000 characters long, including spaces. I come from journalism, so there's where we count in spaces and not in words. And then I would give the text a thorough read, make some editorial comments and suggestions in track changes mode, send the text over. The authors then can check whether they accept it or not, or discuss it. Very important to leave the track changes on. I've had people who sent me next time a totally different version. I don't know which of my suggestions has been taken, which haven't. So I have to start all over again, the whole editorial process. So please always leave the track changes on. And it's optional. We always need a royalty-free image, which I also, so I'm happy to come up with suggestions for, but of course authors can do so as well. Yes, that was it from my side for the time being. And if you have questions, of course, go ahead, feel free to ask them.
Thank you so much, Christiane, for such an insightful presentation. And I would ask you to, feedback or ask any questions to Christiane. And as you do that, I'm going to, first of all, say thank you so much. And a question I
think you're muted.
Am I? Am I muted? No, I'm okay.
Stop sharing.
I cannot hear anybody. I don't know why.
I can hear.
We can hear you very well, Christiane.
And Sheila's definitely not muted.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
No, she has the problem.
Yeah.
No, so can't hear anyone.
Yeah.
We can hear you very well.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, now I can hear. I don't know. Somehow my mic was.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Great.
Sorry.
Thank you very much, Christiane. I was saying your presentation was quite insightful, and the links also very useful and helpful to us. And as people are going to be writing questions for you in the chat, I could just begin by asking. You shared about some of the series that EAD focuses on, and some of it also have caught my eye, and definitely I will be looking to contribute or try send a blog over soon. But there's one on how do you decide which topics to focus on? Are these series like permanent, or do they keep changing? So how does EAD decide that?
Yeah, for the conferences, for when we have a specific project within EADI, like that Share Your Decolonizing Story project, then it also makes sense for a project of ours that we have a blog series on that. So that what we had, and for example, the Trump in Development series, that was because people from our community, they ran a workshop. And they had so many interesting insights that they proposed a blog series. So mainly the blog series are not proposed by me as an editor, but people who say, oh, we've had a workshop, oh, we've had a publication. So from the ranks of our members, they come up with these suggestions. For example, the debt and green transition, that came up from a group of researchers who were working on that, and they came up with the proposal, and I found it quite a good idea. What else did we have as a series? And otherwise, I also read academic journal articles. So because I do the newsletter, and I check what's our community about. So what are they publishing? And when I just see, for example, all those meta level things on development studies, on decolonizing, when I see journal articles on these, then I contact the authors and ask them to write a blog. And I find anything which might be interesting for the community. And also, of course, we have our own journal, the AJDR. It's the European Journal of Development Research. It's our journal. So if I find something in there which might be interesting for the blog, I also ask the authors to write. And of course, people see our blog and they send over suggestions.
Awesome.
That also happens, yeah.
Well, thank you so much. And it's great to know that, it's not just you selecting, but also you're welcome to people proposing, reaching out.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Yes, which is really important. Thank you very much. I see a question in the chat from Aisha. So she's asking, I suppose you receive more blog post requests than you publish. What are the criteria for selection, topic, methods?
I mean, there are. We have never rejected a topic because of the topic, because there are no irrelevant topics. I mean, if somebody would suggest something which has nothing to do with development studies, obviously we would not publish it. But sometimes if blog posts have too little meat to them. So if there's nothing new in there, if people just summarize stuff that is general knowledge, for example, then I would say, please, is there anything new, or is there any example, or is there anything to further develop? And if there isn't, we don't publish.
Okay.
Yeah.
I hope
so there needs to be something new, something that people don't know.
Thank you. Aisha, I hope the question has been answered. If not, you can always follow on with another. Oh, yeah, she says, yes, thank you very much. I see another question from Mudassir, and he's asking, do selected blogs get any honorarium? Yeah.
No, unfortunately not. I also feel a bit embarrassed, especially when authors come from the Global South. But usually the people who write for us are working at universities and they are being paid for doing so. And unfortunately, no, our blog posts are unpaid. I'm embarrassed to say, but that's the case, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Keep the questions coming. I will also ask, you mentioned that normally check, the journal articles, or, also reading the news about what people are really talking about when it comes to development studies. And maybe just, this is a question I had. At the moment, what future directions do you see for academic blogging in ERD at the moment, with the trends?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the trend is the future of development cooperation as such, and the geopolitical issues and their influence on development. So that's a big topic at the moment. And so what could there is a discussion to overhaul the system as a whole, or to go back to what it was, or to do something new. I mean, all these discussions are quite important, I think.
Yes, thank you. My colleague here has a question.
Christiane, thank you for a superb presentation. What are the freedoms that are allowed within the blogs that are written? Do you have any kind? I don't want to use the term censorship, but are there any topics that are not allowed to touch? Criticism of states, criticism
I
of the
wouldn't say so, but everything needs to, especially if it's a sensitive topic, then it should be really linked to research. So because it's an academic blog. So if you have an opinion piece and you want to make a strong opinion, which is heatedly debated, then you have to really put a lot of sources hyperlinked so that you are grounded in research. That would be the criterion. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah. I see Rowena's hand up.
Sheila, can I say something on this?
Yeah.
Yeah. So on the topic of what isn't, so we have rejected a couple of blogs. If we get something that is very personal, but is not grounded in like a theory, no, or it's something that we can prove, right? So we got somebody who wrote what is wrong with this university. Now they've gone on that course, they will know what's wrong, but they need to quantify it by grounding it in, maybe they're teaching the wrong kind of economics, or their perspective of decolonization is wrong. We're interested in the intellectual arguments around it, but not the personal arguments on that. So the author had the option to go back and extend that on sort of not controversial topics, but we're certainly aware in UK universities the freedom of academic expression is particularly limited around Palestine, and so we actively seek any blogs on any conflict or any issues where authors feel that there is no other home, we'll take that. We got one of our early blogs in the genocide was about this as such topic, about the challenges around the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, and about what UK academia are doing. So unlike Christiane's EADI blog, we do not edit the blog for you. We will give you feedback, and it's like up to you to kind of improve the piece. And one of the issues with that one was it was super long. So it was like there were, this point about there's one issue. This was a good one of, okay, are we doing freedom of academic expression, or are we doing actually academia has not done enough, or something else? And where the topic is very specialized, like we don't know enough. I mean, I have learned so much about the IHRA definition that we got it peer reviewed. So we just went very quickly to some people like at Brismes, for example, or something like that, and said, who do you know who can just read this, make sure we want blogs to go out in good faith. We want them to be robust. So it's very quick, nothing like a journal peer review. It's literally someone's like, oh, I'm excited to read this. They tell you straight away, yeah, it's good, but it's a bit long. Normally everybody's feedback is pretty consistent, but then we all can feel comfortable, and we tell the author that that's happening too, if that helps.
Thank you, Rowena.
Great. Thank you so much, Rowena and Christiane, for responding to the questions. I don't see any messages in the chat, any more questions at the moment, but feel free as we go on, if any questions comes to your mind, please feel free to pop it in the chat. So we have come to the end of the first part of the session, which was hearing from practitioners and who are journalists who are working with the blogs, and so to get these insights on how to get started, and what are the criteria of writing a good blog, what to be looking out for. And I think we have all gotten some very wonderful insights from our speakers. Thank you very much, Rowena and Christiane. And also, thank you for also offering to support and sharing your emails and these useful resources, so that if anyone has a question following this session, they're welcome to reach out. I hope, that's the case. So thank you very much for supporting. So at this point, I welcome Jenny to lead us through an interactive session with, academic bloggers, both experienced and non-experienced, who have been, doing this for some years. And she'll lead us into the journey of, some of the challenges, practical challenges they faced, or any experiences they would like us to know. So this is the fun. Both of them, of course, are the fun part, but this is more interactive, more engaging. And you also have an opportunity to pop questions in the chat throughout as we continue. Welcome, Jenny.
Okay, thank you very much, Sheila. Welcome. The next step, as Sheila says, is looking at a sort of panel discussion, a bit of a discussion with two experienced bloggers who we welcome to the session today. So first of all, Dr. Pritish Bahuria, I'm sorry if I've pronounced that very badly with a Scottish accent, who's a political economist, taking an interdisciplinary approach to analysing constraints and possibilities associated with countries exerting more economic autonomy from subordinate positions within the global economy, which is a very lengthy sort of introduction. But from reading your blogs, I can see that you're very able to translate that the sort of heavy language of political economics into a much more accessible theme for people to read. So Pritish completed his PhD in development studies at SOAS. He's a reader, associate professor at University of Manchester's Global Development Institute, the current book reviews editor for the Journal of Development Studies, the founder and convener of the Politics and Political Economy Study Group at the Development Studies Association, and a number of other groups and reading sort of groups as well. So his research spans a very wide range and of areas, and he has a number of recent blogs which are particularly interesting, including the political economy of Rwanda's rise, Mauritius' next growth phase, a new plan is needed as the tax haven era fades. And then on to even subjects like, are African countries aware of their own mineral wealth? Ghana and Rwanda offer two very different answers. So a range of subjects within the blogs as well. And I'd like to welcome as well Mahtab Udin, who's an assistant professor of economics at the University of Dhaka and honorary research director of the South Asian Network on Economic Modelling. He's also a doctoral researcher at the University of Manchester in the UK, and his research spans labour and development economics, applied microeconomic metrics, and international trade. And his recent works have examined automation and employment, LDC graduation, post-pandemic poverty dynamics, and social safety net programs in Bangladesh. Recent blogs include Migration, Markets and Minds, Why International Students Matter, Bangladesh's Poverty Reversal, Causes and Policy Priorities, and a Paradigm Shift in Aid, What Does It Mean for the Global South? So thank you very much for joining us today. I have a few questions to start us off. If people have questions, if they would like to pop them in the chat. If I don't notice them, Sheila, do feel free to interrupt so that we make sure that people are able to ask what they want to. But if I could just start with a question for both of you about when and why you started blogging. What inspired you to start blogging? Do either of you want to jump in first?
Okay, I'll just go.
Yeah, thank you.
But firstly, I just wanted to thank you all for organizing this. It's great to see so many people attending, and thanks also to Rowena and Christiane. That was super interesting as well. I guess for me, Rowena mentioned, for example, the point about blogging to start writing. I think when I first started, like coming back from fieldwork, I think that's why I was doing it in a way. I was kind of like finding it the easiest thing to write. I wasn't really doing it with a particular purpose in mind. Maybe there was a frustration with the literature or something that I wasn't seeing presented accurately about what I was doing research on. Over time, that's shifted. I think even within probably perhaps I was blogging a little too much or something like that. And then I realized, and partly within work, there was a push to blog once you've published to increase the reach of your published work. Whereas I was actually doing it the reverse. I don't know which one is better, or maybe both can go along with each other, but definitely there's been a shift. Now I do it mostly after I published. I don't, yeah.
And you are
Yeah.
Jenny, you're muted.
Yeah. I was just saying that's very interesting that the blogging to start writing would be of interest to many of us still, writing up our dissertations and things, I think. But I like your comment about maybe I did a little bit too much blogging at one point. So we'll hear more about that later. Mahatab, would you like to come in on when you started and why?
Thank you so much, Jenny. Thanks, Sheila and Rowena. That was wonderful first session. So, I actually started blogging quite late. I mean, I started only after I came to my PhD 3 or 4 years back. So basically, how I started this one is I used to write I wrote columns for newspapers in Bangladesh, but blogging is different than writing newspaper articles the way we do it. So why I chose or to come to the blogging or why I started blogging is one of the reasons was like, mainly because it feels good to offload what you are thinking, what is going inside your mind. It feels good if you share what is going inside. So one particular issue is that last year when the UK government started putting more pressure or putting barriers on international students and all those. So my mind was kind of burning inside, like, well, this is not right? I mean, why are you barring international students? It's harmful. It's in the long run. So then I immediately started writing a blog on it. I mean, I went through the sources and I started writing the Market Minds, the blog that is on it. But the first blog I wrote, or the first few blogs that I wrote, those were based on my researches, like on poverty, inequality, or some other issues. So basically, when one very good support I received from the GDI comms team. So in the GDI, there's a dedicated communications team. And when I started writing, I received so good feedback, like, change this topic, you need to emphasize more on this part, or like, can you explain this in layman language? So when I started writing, I used to use lots of jargon because I'm from economics, right? I mean, anything looked like, okay, it's very basic economics. And then I received the feedback like, no, you have to write it such a way that everyone understands. Like Rowena was telling in the beginning, like, when you speak to someone, your friend who is not in your field, when you speak to them, if they understand what you're saying, then it's kind of the blog or it's a very natural language that you'll be speaking to people, the way you will be speaking to a naive, anyone would understand. So that was a big shift, like, jumping from like journals or those kind of articles to coming to the blogging. So that was a very good feedback that I received, like, explain this part, break it down, make it short. So those were very good feedback that I received. Yeah.
Thank you. So it's quite interesting what you're. So that was on an established platform with the GDI, presumably. And I was going to go on to ask you both why, what platforms do you aim to blog on, and why do you choose them? So I know that Mahtab, you use Substack as well, I think, don't you? Can you talk a little
Not
about that?
yet. Not yet on
No, not
Substack.
yet. Okay.
Most of the blogs I have written, it's there are a couple of like definitely GDI one,
Hmm.
and there are few more spaces where I write regularly. But since my most of my research is on Bangladesh, so my blogs are kind of some of the blogs I mostly write now in Bangla, like Bengali.
Okay.
So you see and also I have a kind of left leaning polit. I'm kind of a socialist. So there are some platforms where we regularly write on those topics. So my blogs are mostly either which are very much established in Bangladesh and GDI and some other platforms, but yeah, but it depends on what I'm writing. For example, if I'm writing something which are like criticizing the government of Bangladesh, like their current policies or something, then I write it in Bangla because my major viewers will be from Bangladesh, and I'll be publishing there in some of the left-leaning blogs that we have there. And but if I'm writing something quite academic, then I'll be going for like the established one in the UK, like the DSA one or the GDI one. Yeah.
Thank you. Pritish, do you want to add to that in terms of what platforms you might approach?
Yeah, thanks, Jenny. I would say these days, especially, there are two ways. Basically, where possible, not always, but whenever I publish something and I think it may have some kind of public audience, I do publish in the conversation. So like I think two of the pieces you mentioned, I didn't come up with the title. I mean, I'm not personally, I'm not so happy with the conversations editing. I mean, they really rewrite a lot of it, and I'm not really like, I mean, sometimes it's okay, but there's a lot of versions but it does have a massive reach. Like I wrote this paper about luxury tourism in three countries. It really, really got picked up by a lot of newspapers through the conversation. So I do recommend it, but they generally like to publish things only um, after the article has actually been published. It's also good because then hopefully people will click on your article too. Um, so I'd say conversation for post-publication outlet is the best. Now, like Mehtab, I think it's very important. Like it depends on the particular topic you're writing about. Like for me, I was obviously right out of research. I was mostly still doing most of my work is about Eastern and Southern Africa. So I was publishing in things like the LSE Africa blog because I was working at the LSE then, or like a Democracy in Africa is run by an academic as well. And I publish in the GDI blog as well, my own department. But also, since I work also on disciplinary like debates within development, um, there's also a pluralist academic blog which was very active for many years called Developing Economics, mostly for heterodox economists. So I published a couple of times there as well, and it had great reach. But yeah, it depends a little bit on, I think, what your topic is and the field and the people you want to speak to, really.
Thank you. It's interesting you talking about reach and whether a platform is useful for maybe pre-publication or post-publication in the case of the conversation. Could you talk a little bit about what you think blogging has added in terms of value to your academic career? And we'll start with you, Pritesh, if you
Oh,
want, and then yeah.
okay. Yeah, I guess so, like looking back, I think I was blogging a bit too much, but I think it I mean, I say that partly because maybe I should have been writing, like, I mean, that's writing my PhD basically. But like, it is good to blog a bit because it gets your work out there. I mean, and for me, it was actually a useful way of sharpening my ideas. It also helps you build your network to some degree. It helps you position yourself within debates a little bit. I mean, I think it's particularly depending on, I mean, for my work, I'm always trying to go against dominant narratives a bit. So about things, so it is useful. It does, I think, help things. Now, the reason I shifted and reduced my blogging was partly because I realized that also for the university, there seemed to be more push for us to publish afterwards. And that was to sketch out the impact. I don't know how much this actually matters in the end for the university either, and things have shifted, but there was some discussion about this. And I did find it more effective in getting my stuff out to a wider group of people post-publication, and not speaking to the same audiences who already know me. I mean, not to say that if I publish in the same blogs, everybody knows me, but it's just like I think like something like the conversation has such a wide reach. It's outside my little academic bubble,
Yeah.
like the policy people I engage with. So there is now I guess that really it does help you in getting your work known and your network, etc. Ultimately, it is not an academic publication. So that is important to remember, but it is it is helpful both in terms of getting you to an academic publication. I do think so. And I really do encourage blog writing in that way to help you sharpen your thoughts, but definitely post academic publication to maximize the reach.
And so if I put the same question to you, Mahtab, how do you feel it's, especially as you're currently, I mean, you obviously have quite an extensive career already, but you're currently also trying to do your PhD. So I'm intrigued to know how it all fits together and what it does for you.
Thank you so, Jenny. I think let me take on from what Pritish mentioned about, it helps to make your idea more clear. So how, for example, when I'm working on particular issue and when I try to write a blog, how it helps is that particularly, so it helps me to understand it more widely. So it's kind of you take a step back and try to look it holistically, like, what is the overall scenario? Particularly when you do our research, we have very focused, but very sometimes in economics, we have very focused questions. Like, we have very particular narrowed down view on, like, we are trying to understand what is happening due to this, due to A, what is A is doing on B, something like that kind of impact that we try to understand in our research. But when you're writing the blog, you try to link it out more broadly. So so how I found it, like, helping is or how it contributed to my if you ask me, like, on my research or my understanding, is like it helps me to, so when you are writing the blog, sometimes we need to, like Rowena mentioned about, like, you have to back up whatever you are writing with something. On writing a blog is not something like whatever comes to your mind, you are just putting up there. It's not something like that, right? So it is very constructed. You have very few words to express yourself, like 1,000 words maximum or less than that. And within those words, you are trying to express yourself in such a way so that everyone understands. So there are many, we are not going to do any the way we footnote or endnote we put on our regular papers, we cannot put footnotes or endnotes here, right? We cannot put too many citations. You cannot. It has to be very succulent. It has to be very brief yet readable. There has to be some story in it, right? So bringing the person. One thing I got very good feedback I received from Louisa from our comms department earlier when I was like very naive in writing blogs, was that bring personal touch to whatever you're writing. So when you bring some personal touch to a blog, it brings some more meaning to it. So when it's like you're narrating a story, what you have observed yourself. So I would say bringing that personal touch helped me to understand sometimes well, why I'm doing this and how does it matter in the wider audience, like why my research matters for a wider group of people. If you write a blog, answering that questions become much easier, like why you are doing it, for whom you are doing it, why does it matter for the people, why would anyone care about your research outside the your academic peers who will be reading your paper. I mean, in general, in the general public, why would they care? Understanding that piece of rationale, or that gives writing a blog. It really helps when you're joining those dots. Yeah.
So it's interesting because it's another form of reach, isn't it? You've got the reach as in you're getting your research out there, but then it's also helping you understand why it's relevant on a wider space. So I can see that that's very useful. And how do you, British has managed to, has mentioned a little bit that he started to blogging to get writing and then perhaps focused a little bit too much on blogging when he should have been doing more academic writing. How do you find the time that it takes, and how does that fit in with your other responsibilities and PhD and work?
No, thank you so much, Jenny. I mean, that's a very crucial question, and critical one as well, difficult to answer. How I would answer that, a lot of the times when I write, when I'm writing a blog on something, I might be writing something which is close to my research area, but something which is very much relevant to the current context, like some issues with the economy, some issues on some other issues. So those are not purely on my research, but if I'm right, so those sometimes take a bit time. And I'm also associated with one of the we have a students organization in the University of Manchester, GDA Students for Palestine. So I also write blogs for our platform. So those definitely take some time, right? I mean, okay, let me tell you when I really enjoy writing my blogs. I really enjoy writing my blogs when I'm traveling. When I'm traveling by bus, when I'm traveling by train. So some of the blogs you will see, those are definitely, for example, the Markets and Minds blog. I wrote it when I was traveling back from the Lake District to Manchester. So basically, those are the moments really help you. You get into it. Those are kind of you cannot. You won't be reading. You can definitely read academic articles during those rides, but you can definitely spend some time on blogs as well. So I really love writing blogs or pieces like this when I'm traveling. So that gives me some extra time of doing it. And apart from it, definitely, maintaining the deadline is very when you have deadline. So I don't, to be very honest, it becomes quite difficult to or kind of, if you want to write a blog every 2 pieces a month, that's not possible. I mean, it's more healthier, I guess, if you write once in a while, like one blog in every few months, or 5 to 6 blogs a year, or
So
just
yeah,
finding
realistic.
just finding your sweet spot, like, how much time you want to put in here. Because writing a blog, as I was saying, it's a different form of write-up, but you
Yeah.
have to back up whatever you're writing with existing works, with hyperlink, so that people can check whatever you're saying. There are substantial research on it.
Yeah.
That's yeah.
Thank you. Pritish, where do you write? Do you write when you're traveling as well? How do you fit it in around things now?
I definitely don't write when I'm traveling. I find it very difficult to write when I'm traveling. But I mean, I think there has to be I just write it during my day, basically, like the normal thing. I mean, I think to write a blog, I just really have to be uh, pretty focused on writing it. It's not something I can do on the side. There has to be a real motivation to do it, because it's not something that's, I mean, there's a lot of rewards in it in terms of the impact that you can make from it and the network that you can build from it. But it's not like something that's rewarded within my academic day to day as such. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I have a secret way to write it though.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Hopefully people, will start popping some questions in the chat in a minute, and we're going to have some time for questions for everybody shortly. But just to sort of round off this little bit, I wondered if you had a one sentence sort of piece of advice for any would-be bloggers in the audience today. I'll give you a little bit of time to think about it, but just something that might inspire them, or a bit of advice, or even something that not to do as well might be quite useful. Matab, have you got?
So my suggestion would be, like, just start writing. So you don't have to perfect your blog at the first time you're writing it. So just write it out and then send it to a very close friend, or if you have a comms department I mean, if you have a comms team in your department, you can also talk to them. I found, for example, I was telling you, like, I found them very helpful in the GDI. I'm sure they can be very helpful in other universities. Reach out to them for some comments or some feedback. And I know that doctoral schools usually have some kind of trainings organized, so you can reach out to a doctoral school as well, like organize some basic training on how to write a blog, or what are or like, the first session that we had this afternoon, that was very helpful as well, right? So my suggestion would be, like, just start writing, send it to someone in your department, or close circle. Just ask them what is their feedback. For example, what I do, I send it to my wife. She's also PhD student at the University of Manchester in the GDI. So I usually send it first to her and ask her, give me your feedback. And if she says it's a trash, well, that's fine. Then I need to work on it further. But that helps a lot. Like the like her view on it, like, where to improve on that.
Yeah.
And my second advice would be, like, try to make it relevant. Like, why would someone read your blog? It's there. If they want to read your blog, they will be spending 5 to 7 minutes or 3 to 5 minutes on your blog. So you have to give something that that makes up for that opportunity cost. Like, in those 5 to 7 minutes, they could have watched a reel, a TikTok video, some dance, some music. So you have to have something that attracts people for that 5 to 7 minutes. So, so one thing, so try to hook up, try to make your piece very relevant to whatever happening in the world, in the society, in the country. So those will be my 2 cents, like, write whatever is in your mind, and second one, relate to it, to to the wider circumstances.
Thank you. Lovely. Pritish.
I guess my do not would be don't write exceptionally long sentences. I know I get it a lot from, and then my main one would be to really write what you care about, because there are a lot of things you can write, but I think in a blog you can really tell if the person is cares or not, and it's not an academic piece, so you may as well just really care what you write about.
Brilliant. So that's some good bits of advice there. Just start writing, get some feedback, make it relevant, and write something that you care about. Write about something that you care about, and yeah, watch for long sentences. I'm another culprit for the long sentence as well. Although now I'm going to be paranoid after what Rowena said about AI, that if I make them too short, it'll look like an AI generated blog. So thanks very much for that. I think, Sheila, we want to open the questions for everyone. Is that right? Or do you have a question specifically?
Yeah, at this point, we could open it up for everyone, although I also have questions. So,
do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Yes, sure. I mean, I think this can go to all the speakers or anyone who'd, feel like they would be able to respond to this. When writing research, we always have this tier, journals like Q1 journal, Q2. So, the most esteemed blogs, the most esteemed blogs that researchers should look to write, because sometimes writing in maybe those low tier journals can impact how a researcher is viewed. And I don't know whether the same applies to blogging. Does it matter where you blog? There are some of these respected blogs that we should focus on, but for example, I had a Matab talking about, writing for some of the blogs in his country and sometimes also writing, for the UK audience as well. Does it matter where we blog in terms of increasing our researchers' profile? Yeah, I've seen Rowena. You can please go.
Sheila, yeah, I'll jump in here. I mean, it goes back to that question of why are you blogging? That's one of the first things. Because if you just want to have your research out there everywhere, and you don't have like a really huge game plan, you just want everyone to start talking about or knowing about this issue, the conversation can be great. So that would be like your top tier, because it has what's called syndication. It means that once it's published, other news outlets can replicate that around the world, saying this first appeared in the conversation. So you suddenly pop up in lots of places that you don't want to, or you didn't know. Sorry, not that you didn't know. So you have that. But if you have a really specific audience, so Matab was talking about, like, if he's going to be super left wing, if you want to be really edgy with something, maybe you want more of a niche blog. You want to have the freedom to say whatever you want. You're probably not going to get with, say, somewhere like The Conversation. So it's really knowing why you're doing this. That's how you choose.
Thank you so much, Rowena, for that question. And I see another question also in the chat. And from Gordon, in terms of mechanics, how long does the process normally take from the first draft to the final blog online?
Oh, Matab, you're muted at the moment. Do you want to come in on that?
Sorry. Yeah. So can you? Yeah, I hope you can hear me now. So I think it depends on from which platform you're writing, what you're writing, and for whom you're writing. So so if you're writing on particularly any, for example, if I tell you, although I wrote the blog, as I mentioned, I wrote the Market Minds when I was traveling back, but it took me literally 2 to 3 days to finalize it. So the first draft I put out from my mind. That was very quick. I wrote whatever came to my mind. I wrote, make the first draft. Usually that should not take much time. Don't think too much when you are writing your zero or the negative zero draft. Negative draft. Zero is not negative number. Anyway, when you're writing your very first thing, whatever is in your mind, don't think too much. Just write it down. But it takes time to make it polished. Like it will take some time to back up your numbers. For example, when I write, I put XXX or YYY. Like these are the places I'll fill in because I know otherwise I lose my thought. So what I do, I write it whatever comes to my mind, but I put asterisks or something like that. Like I will put figures on international students' contribution in tourism in the UK. I'll put figures on this. I'll find the numbers of, number of UK students coming, international students coming to the UK every year. Because, you know, putting those information, putting those links, going through those papers, that takes time. Going through those, because you can't rely on the AI. Definitely don't rely on the AI at all. Like don't ask AI like find me those numbers. If they find you the sources, go to the sources, read the paper, read the arguments, and you just link it. So that takes time. So that usually on an average took me a few days to. And also, you'll not be writing your blog for the whole day, right? So it will like a few hours a day. So that would definitely take you a few days. So it usually takes me around a week to make it from the first zero draft to the final one. But that's a few hours every day. So yeah.
Pritish, do you want to come in on how
Yeah, I
long
mean,
it takes?
I guess it varies. I mean, for me, like usually if I'm struggling to write, if I'm able to write, then I mean, I can write the draft relatively quickly. This is so short, but it then becomes a question of like the revisions and how much you revise, and then the outlets take time as well. I mean, I've had my blogs published 3-4 months later, like, so it's not. I mean, if it's time sensitive, then of course, like I think usually I haven't had something that's been so delayed, but the conversation has taken time, for example, before. Maybe not 3-4 months, but definitely more than a month. So yeah, I mean, it's you have to be patient with it, like with everything else, and as with everything, revising is most of the writing, right? So.
It's interesting you talked about the time sensitive, because I wondered how that would work if you're blogging about a particular topic that is time sensitive. Have you got any? Does anyone want to add anything about that?
For that, I would just go with my university blog.
Yeah, that
Because
makes
they'll put it
sense.
up pretty quickly. Or I guess, yeah, generally.
Yeah. I suppose that's where people who are self-published have a little bit more
we would
freedom.
take.
Sorry, Rowena.
I would say we would take time-sensitive blogs as well. It's a really good way to get something out pretty quick. My experience with conversation when it's breaking news, they will move in that sense. So the last time I did a conversation piece, you get like parallel sort of screens, so to speak, where you can see the edits they're making. But if it's something they really want to run with, they can be quite drastic to get it signed off as quickly as possible. So that's something you have to think about the trade-off on that. That's why at least within either your own personal blog, your institute's blog, or an association's blog, if you can explain to them why you have this particular stance, why you want it to be written like that, you have a bit more freedom.
Personally speaking, I found the university blog, like the GDA blog, the quickest one, and that's why I usually relied on it. I submitted the conversation once, but it was time pressing, so I just withdrew my my work from there. So yeah. So and then I submitted to the GDI. So yeah. So yeah, that would be my response. Is like, maybe your university blog or the other. I mean, what I get is the conversation or blogs like those are very, very. They receive hundreds of blogs every single day. So definitely it will take some time. And if you are not I'm only a PhD student, right? If you are not an established name, they might turn to your piece a bit later. That's what I thought. For establishing your name, for putting up your first blog, best would be go with like uh, go with your department ones, or some other blogs which are very student friendly or early career research friendly. For myself, I can tell you, finding your first blog published will give you much joy. So try to have it first, and then go for the big names like the conversation or other. Yeah.
We've got oh, sorry, I'm just seeing a comment from Rowena. It's a good point, Mahtab. There's a big difference between you asking the conversation to blog versus those rare occasions when they want you to write for them. The speed differs. And I guess it must be lovely when you suddenly get asked to write by one of these, when it turns to that. We've got another question from Aisha here. Can you publish blogs as a sole author based on a published co-authored paper? Who wants to come in on that?
I wrote blogs on published papers from my co-authors. I just had to give their names, this is what you have found from our paper. And definitely, I cross-checked with my co-authors. I wrote this piece. Are you happy? Or do you have any feedback? Or anything I missed? Something? And they were happy with my, and I didn't have to make them co-author of my blog, but I ran it first with them. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that would probably be the best way to do it. If you must talk to your co-authors if it's based on that research. And then whether you co-author the blog with them, which could be one option, or you do it on their behalf but recognize it. But I think you have to talk to your co-authors first, because that could end up being a problem later.
Rowena, do you want to say anything about that, or Christiana, about no, you just take the authorship as who approaches you?
Yes, sorry. I mean, yes. I mean, I hadn't thought of that question, to be very frank, but I had published blog posts by a few authors, not everybody. But of course, I was assuming that it was on behalf of all the authors. Sometimes I reach out to somebody who has published a journal article. I reach out to all the authors, and if then one author answers CCing everybody else and nobody objects, then I think that's fine.
That makes sense. I'm just looking to see if there's any other questions. I think the sensitivity over working, if you have other authors in your team, then then running it by them. I wonder what the situation is. I suppose this is more for you, Mahtab. Have you ever run anything by your supervisor beforehand? Before, should we take this to a blog, or should I take this to, and for you, Pratish, as well, when you were talking about blogging to get writing, did you ever think I should maybe double check with my supervisor whether I should go ahead with this as a blog first?
Definitely, if I write a blog on my PhD chapter, definitely I will run it with my supervisor first. Definitely, because that will be more sensible, and to find their views if I have, if there's anything to add or something. But one thing I really find it a bit cautious, like, is that, public. I would prefer my blog after my article is published or in the print, like after it has been accepted by a journal. So after it is accepted to a journal, I can write, like, with a footnote, like, it is in the preprint, or it is coming in the coming issue. So, but definitely, I would run it with my supervisors. Yeah. Oh, by the way, one thing is that, if you're co-authoring a paper, and if you're writing a blog and your paper has not been published yet, I don't think you can write a blog on it without the permission of your co-authors. You have to talk to your co-authors if your paper is not published at all. So that would make a big difference, like, because you will need their, conflict of interest, like, whether they are happy with it, whether if your research is funded by any organization. There are some clauses sometimes that you have to mention their names as well, or so you have to be, on this topic, who funded it, whether the paper is published or not. Those will be important parts as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for in terms of PhDs, like when I was a PhD student, I never sent anything I wrote to my supervisor. But of course, I'm a qualitative researcher, so we don't, like, it's our independent research. It has nothing to do with them, really. And similarly for me, I read my PhD students' blog before they submit, when they choose to send it to me. But if they don't send it to me, it's fine. It's their own writing. I mean, that's my opinion about this. So I don't, like in certain other fields, of course, it's more that you write together, you publish with your co-author. But of course, as a qualitative researcher, that just doesn't come into thinking at all. At least in my tradition and most people I work with, I would say that that's the thing. I mean, we would still obviously give feedback, but not our name would never appear like on those.
Thank you. There's a good point from Rowena on this. I think it depends on the kind of blog you're doing. If it's about a specific research finding, then you need to check with your co-authors. But if you're blogging about, for example, your experience on the research, it can be something that's about you only and doesn't need their reference. And we carry a disclaimer saying the blogs are the views of the author only, etc., which I think is worth noting. But there's another question come in. What do suggest early researchers on writing blogs? Sorry, Mudassir, I'm a little bit unclear about if you could rephrase that slightly, or is anyone else? What do you suggest to early researchers on writing blogs? I'm not too sure about that one. Sheila, we're getting close to the time. I don't know if you want to ask anything else or round anything up.
Yeah, no, at the moment I don't have any questions. Just a wonderful observation that I had, that you can ask in terms of who can review your blog. It's the unusual people you see every day. So long as you can communicate to them, then you can communicate to everyone. So of course, we have the contacts of Rowena, Christian, and other established bloggers like Pritish or Matab, or those that you know in your circles. But don't hesitate to reach out to your mom, to your brother, to your sister, to your spouse, to just ask, what do you think about this piece I've written? Because if it makes sense to them, then it definitely would make sense to a number of others who probably have no idea about your research. I think Mudassir has rephrased his question, even as we now are coming to the end. Shall Ali researchers or PhD focus on writing academic articles or have some experience of writing blogs?
I can quickly try to answer it, and then Pritish can, put the cherry on top. So my response would be like, first of all, we all have some kind of writing blocks, right? Sometimes you try to write, it doesn't come. So what I found very helpful is writing blogs is getting rid of those blocks, those writing blocks. So to write the blogs, you have to get rid of your writing blocks. So, so try to write before your academic. You don't have to focus on academic articles. You can definitely try to, for example, one of my friends wrote a blog on her, experience with field research. So she went to a country, she had some kind of very first-hand experience on field research. And then when she came back, she wrote a blog entirely on it, like how they face problem and what it meant for their work, how they reconceptualize their. So, they had a disruption. They went to a coffee store without any plan, and just wrote a blog on it, like how it changed their view. So you see, it was not entirely on her academic work, but it was on her field visit. So you can write your blog on field visit. You can write on your personal experience with something, with some growing issue in your country, in your neighborhood. Okay. So, for example, I mentioned right that I'm from Bangladesh, so I really follow the politics of Bangladesh, really follow what is happening in the economy of Bangladesh. And when I write for any blog which is relevant to Bangladesh society or culture, I write it in Bangla and I publish in a blog, some blogs which are very popular in among the Bengali community. So, but those are not on my research, but those are on my niche area where I have my expertise, where I'm very comfortable with. You remember what Pritish mentioned during the beginning? You have to find your enthusiasm. You have to care about it. So what I write about is things I care about. So the things I care about in the UK, in the economy of Bangladesh or some other places, some global south. So whatever issue that feels to you very urgent, that you want to speak up, start writing on it. It doesn't have to be your academic article. So once you're done with it, it will be very easy for you to write a blog on your academic article or just some. So basically when you're writing on academic article, you are not going to explain your research. You're not going to explain every bit of it. You're going to put telling the broader audience the gist of it, like, what it does, what you have found. But it becomes much easier when you are very comfortable with, narrating whatever is in your mind. That's how I would be putting it. Thank you.
I mean, I agree with what Mehtab has said. I think basically the function of writing a blog is very different from writing an academic article. So, of course, I take your point that you only have certain amount of hours in a day. So, what do you want to focus on? And ideally, of course, they go alongside each other. But a blog is not an academic article. I think we need to be clear about that. But of course, academic articles are not everything. The blogs have other purposes and they get you to other places. So it depends on what purpose I mean, the two things have very different purposes, I would say.
Can I just add one point? Basically, exactly what Priti said. The writing academic article is completely different. So try to write, as I mentioned earlier, like, sometimes when I write blogs, I really feel much lighter after I write it down. So when people will be reading your work, when they will be, talking on your blog, you will feel better. You will definitely feel very good. So writing a blog is completely different than academic, but definitely academic articles, you have to write it. Being an academic, you have to write your academic articles. So there is no question on that. So do focus on your academic articles. But writing a blog comes like as your conversation with general public. That's how I put it. Write articles for your career, for your bread and butter, for your promotions, from your intellectual outputs, but write blogs for general people, for ordinary people, for the wider audience. Like I'm from economics, but when I'll be writing a blog, I would expect that people from anthropology, people from public policy, people from other fields, they will also be writing my article, so that everyone understands me. It's kind of putting a piece in the puzzle. So I'm a piece in the bigger society. So how I can contribute in that bigger discussion from my own experience from that particular. But writing academic articles, you have to do it. You should do it. And writing the blogs, do it for yourself. You'll feel better, definitely.
Thank you. I think we're probably coming to the end of the session. Sheila, do you want to finish off your exit? You're on.
All right. Thank you very much. Really wonderful insights, and to all that have stayed throughout the session to the end of this, to our wonderful speakers. Thank you for sharing your insights and the wealth of experiences. I think it's gotten us to think about these other ways we can disseminate or talk about our research and through other audiences. So thank you very much for making it clear and making it look possible for us. Thank you to all of you, Christiane, Rowena, Pritish, Matab, Jenny, and all of you for coming. And of course, we would really appreciate your feedback, and we have a wealth of resources for you based on what we've shared today. The meeting was recorded, so we will be able to have this as a link on the webpage that we will share for anyone who will have missed, or you just want to go back and hear again and maybe get some of these tips that we have shared here. So feel free to access the same. So we'll put a link on the chat also for a quick feedback, a short survey that you can help us fill in terms of sharing. How did you find the training? Was it useful? How could we improve future trainings? What sort of webinars would you like the DSA, to organize? Some of you are coming to learn about the Development Studies Association for the first time. We shared links on how you could join as a postgraduate researcher, early career researcher, and network with us. So feel free to just share in the link. We put the link to the survey on the chat. It's very short, and most of it is just, how did you find it? So if you could please help fill that survey, we'll really appreciate. And also, I hope some of you, as Rowena has said, are going to be coming to Dublin for the Development Studies Association conference. It's happening in July between 8th and 10th. Yes, at University College Dublin. So I hope really that a number of you can come. There's a link also to the chat. More information about us, feel free to reach to any of us. We have been contacting and speaking with you. And we'll share again, as I said, a link to a webpage with every resource that we have shared today, as well as the recording. Thank you very much. That will be it from me. I don't know if anyone would like to say anything.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you for organising this, Sheila and Zach. Much appreciated.
And thanks to you and Rowena as well. Thank you. You're muted, Rowena.